Hello.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
I'm Amy.
I'm Lori.
I'm Haley.
And this is Hugo Girl, a podcast in which we hilariously talk about science fiction and fantasy things that are Hugo or Hugo adjacent. Okay. Followers, comments, etc.
I have so many. Listen,
Why shouldn't I keep them?
They're all my precious. I did truncate them, so I won't be reading them for like 5 minutes. But we got 3 new reviews the past month. Woo. Oh, I'll live forever.
Thank you, Seth.
So, I know. Thank you for sending us listeners. That's so nice. So, first one is El Bustos, who says, love the podcast. I have only been listening for a few weeks. I am a man, and I found this looking for more talk about Hyperion. Love the new point of view on some of my favorite books. Would love for y'all to do an episode on the Forever War. Guess what, buddy? We're going to do it. Coming up.
We're doing it next. Yay!
And then another one from Adisha. And Adisha says, delightful. I read tons of sci-fi and fantasy, and I love listening to smart and opinionated people discuss it. So this podcast is perfect for me.
And you're perfect for us.
Yes,
so that
thank
works
you.
out great.
And then Boognish17 says, a great sci-fi podcast. Smart, insightful, and fun discussion of Hugo Award winners. The podcast is well done. Good job, Kevin. And a pleasure to listen to, even as a casual sci-fi fan. And the hosts are amazing.
That's us.
A must listen to for great perspectives on the genre, as well for pure enjoyment of fun, intelligent, irreverent at times, but always on point podcast. Keep up the great work.
I don't know if I agree we're always on point, but that's... Oh, like on point, like we're doing a good job.
I mean, that's up to them. So
we're not on the point. Like sometimes we stray from the point.
Oh,
Oh, no, but we like do some research and we read the book.
No, that I agree. Yeah,
our discussions are on fleek.
we're Gucci.
Anyway, thank you all for those. Those are really nice, and they made my day for days and days and days, and are continuing to make my day. So thank you.
And you may have heard our mini-sode that we put out on the Dune movie film that has come out recently, but we have some merch out and about if you want to avail yourself of it. It's at bonfire.com/Hugo-girl, and you can buy some merch for you, your mother, your friends, your dad, your dog, whatever you want to do.
It's hoodie season.
It's hoodie season. It's sweatshirt season. It's long sleeve season. All of those are available to you, and all of the proceeds go to the Women's Prison Book Project. Do it. Do it.
Yay.
Okay. So this week we are any corrections corners?
I don't think so.
We're correct about
I
everything.
just have some stuff about how Isaac Asimov is gross.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we'll get there.
Oh, no. We're going to get some bad feedback from this.
Oh, we'll get there. Okay, so then we'll just jump right in. So this month we have read the first published work in the Foundation series. So Foundation was published in 1951, and but it's a collection of short stories that were published in Astounding Magazine between 1942 and 1950. I believe some of the other books in the rest of the original trilogy also are collections of short stories as well. So the book itself that we read, Foundation, never won the Hugo, but in 2018, the retrospective Hugo for Best Short Story went to Foundation, which was published in 1942 and is the first. It was the first short story written for the book, or the first short story written that went into the book, and it is the second chapter. So it's now the Encyclopedists. So that won a retrospective in 2018. And then, so the Foundation series as a whole was a trilogy for about 30 years, and it included Foundation, Foundation and Empire, and Second Foundation. And that original trilogy won the Hugo Award for Best All-Time Series in 1966, which was a one-time award all the way up until 2017 when they started giving out Best Series annually.
Huh.
Yeah. And Asimov actually said he thought they created the award to give it to the Lord of the Rings, and so he was really surprised that he won. So he was up against that in a Heinlein series, and
He was up against Lord of the Rings in this one?
this one.
Well.
Even I think that's bullshit.
So, and just to round out the context of it, starting in 1981, Asimov started adding more volumes, including sequels and prequels, and the whole thing is now 7 volumes. So in world order, not publication order, the whole series is Prelude to Foundation, Forward the Foundation, Foundation, Foundation and Empire, Second Foundation, Foundation's Edge, and Foundation and Earth. Foundation's Edge won the Hugo for Best Novel in 1983.
So this would be book 3
Yes.
as the set is now.
Oh, that's like Foundation Drift.
Yes. Foundation, Terminus Drift.
Fast and foundational.
Two Foundation,
Two Foundation.
Two Foundation, Too Furious. Yeah, so that's the Hugo context. It's kind of complicated for this one, but that's where we are.
Good job.
Okay, so brief plot summary by the DM. I got to tell you guys, this is real short and it doesn't touch on most of what happens, but this is what we're going to do.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah, the plot of Foundation's a little scattered because it's a collection of short stories, so it doesn't really have a through line as such, but it's more like vignettes of a civilization to kind of show its progress over a couple hundred years. In broad strokes, in the beginning, we are introduced to Hari Seldon, who is a psychohistorian on Trantor, which is the HQ of the Galactic Empire. Seldon has predicted the fall of the Empire, followed by 30,000 years of barbaric chaos and war, and the Empire is not happy with that prediction. So he goes on trial, and then some things happen, and then he convinces them to let him set up a foundation to create the Encyclopedia Galactica, i.e. Wikipedia, so all of humanity's accumulated progress and knowledge isn't lost. And he says if he can do that, then he can shorten the period of chaos to 1,000 years instead of 30,000 years. So Seldon and his people go off and settle on this planet called Terminus and start doing their thing. Next, we see 50 years down the road, Seldon tells the people that basically intergalactic Wikipedia doesn't matter. Instead, the civilization on Terminus will be in charge of forestalling the 30,000 years of chaos through the choices they make when confronted with a series of predicted crises, which basically are a convergence of insurmountable external and internal problems. And then these Seldon crises, as they're called, show up for the rest of the stories, and we watch men like Salvor Hardin, Linmar Ponyetz, and Hober Mallow do real smart and sneaky things to pull civilization forward. That is the synopsis.
That's good.
Amy, you did a good job.
Yeah, I don't know what I would have done.
It reminded me of why I didn't like this book.
So I gotta tell you, I have a little soft spot for Salvor Hardin and Hober Mallow. I really like Hober Mallow's name. And then Salvor Hardin, all he does is chomp on cigars and tilt his chair backwards.
I do like him.
I liked him.
I'm gonna say up front, there are things about this book that I did like and I did enjoy. I just didn't enjoy reading it, but and don't worry, I'll expand on that in link.
I will say,
I liked that character.
Yeah, and Asimov was only 21 when he first started writing these, and so he was pretty young. And then he had read The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire right before he started writing them, so it was sort of like that whole like empire building and fall was like in his mind.
So if he's 21, it makes more sense to me that there are no women because maybe he hadn't even met any.
He'd been in science school.
Yeah, like, he might have never met a woman if he was only 21.
It's entirely
that
possible.
makes perfect sense.
And
to me.
when he went back and read them later, he was pretty appalled. Like, but that there was no plot, no women, no nothing. So he knows they're not good.
I mean, I think it's like Dune and like great world building. That's a huge part of science fiction. So
it's a book of ideas.
So one thing that I read, and I am not informed enough on the scope and history of science fiction. This is like a Cora Boulert question because she would definitely know. Mm-hmm. But I read something that said that this was really the first instance, I guess, at least in like English Western fiction, where we had like a galactic federation and like interplanetary politics and government and that kind of thing. So that was like groundbreaking and has really set the stage for like everything that we read and watch now. And so that's huge. But like, reading it in 2021, it's like, well, I get it. I know I know this story or I know how this works. So that's no fault of the book.
Yeah.
That it doesn't feel exciting.
Right. We're definitely more familiar with things that have imitated it than reading it for the first time. So,
and he did come up with a lot of things in this book that, I mean, he had to invent this whole cloth out of, just nothing. So the intergalactic things, the concept of parsecs,
parsec is a real unit of measure.
In space?
Yeah, I looked it up.
I thought he came up with that.
Oh, okay. I did. I don't feel bad. I thought that too.
It's just a distance.
I was reading it on my Kobo, so I was like, and I searched the word, and it was like an astronomical unit of measure. And I was like, just a real one. Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
I was giving him credit where it weren't due. So
no, Star Wars used it incorrectly and then retconned it into a unit of distance. So
Okay, got it. Well, other stuff though, like
for sure.
Like,
do you mean like the computer clock? I have a whole section on his language. So
I can't wait to get there. Then that's great because also his characters are just like these fun archetypes of various political
talking heads.
Like they're just embodiments of ideas, right? My favorite by far was My Pillow. My Pillow Nuclear Edition, Hober Mallow. I freaking love him.
Wait, what's the My Pillow thing?
He's just conquering the world with his gadgetry and
like selling shitty products.
Oh, yeah.
he's like, would you like this nuclear washing machine? Well, have I got a deal for you? And then he like basically
have a
makes
section
them all
about that.
beholden to
You
him.
know what always happens is when I hate a book and then we talk about it and end up liking it better, and I immediately like this better now.
Okay, yeah. So I think this is from that section. Mallow said, "This reminds me of like a guy, like a door-to-door salesman from like the 1940s. We can explain the workings of dummy corporations if you would like. Then,
No, I would not
working
like
further at random, take our complete line of household gadgets. We have collapsible stoves that will roast the toughest meats to the desired tenderness in 2 minutes. We've got knives that won't require sharpening. We've got the equivalent of a complete laundry that can be packed, ditto dishwasher, like ditto floor scrubbers.
It slices, it dices.
And then later, there's the whole concept that when the kitchen gadgets break down, the entire planet is going to revolt.
The women specifically will revolt because it's the woman's dishwasher, the woman's...
I was just picturing some Lysistrata nonsense when they couldn't wash their clothes.
Guys, we have skipped over goodies from
I
Goodreads.
know, we gotta
and I
go
have
back. We gotta go back. We gotta go back.
gems.
I have a gem,
Goodies
too.
from Goodreads. All right. Who wants to start?
So
Jump right in.
I was Googling a lot today, and I found Google reviews of this book, which is weird. That's a new thing
That
I learned
exists.
about.
It's a
So
thing, yeah.
I found one from a 12-year-old boy
Yeah.
named Artur Hambard's Umyan.
Good try.
I don't... That's what it looks like.
That is what it looks like.
But it's long.
Hambard's Umyan. That's just his name. Okay.
I couldn't do better.
He gave it 5 stars on Google reviews, which I'm not sure why that's a thing. I am 12 years old in a public school, so there were some concepts that I couldn't quite catch at first. But I quickly learned about the politics and all of that because my mom and dad explained it to me. I can't believe how smart Harry Seldon is to be able to literally target big mobs of people and create a predicted look into the future. I think they didn't explain the people in the book very well, though, so I couldn't understand their personalities. The way the characters like Mayor, Hardin, and Ponyetz and Mallow were able to smooth talk everyone in their clever scheme blew my mind. I
Is this
recommend
satire?
I don't know. I recommend
This
this
is the
book.
target audience.
I recommend this book to people who are teens or above because it is very enjoyable. 13 people found this helpful.
Cute. How cute. That is precious.
Yeah.
Go for it, Lori. Yeah.
Okay. Here's the I got good news and I got bad news. I got some good goodies. The bad news is they're kind of long and I couldn't make any
Go for it,
choices.
girl.
Okay.
Just do it.
All right.
That's what this one. I had to cut hers down to 2 paragraphs, and it was originally like 12, and I really liked it, the whole thing.
So this is a 1-star review from my new friend John. And it starts with, "What an old pile of wombats do." A truly awfully written book with no big ideas, but rather a medium-sized idea, exploited to the max. But particularly hard to take is the fact that in all of these billions and billions of people on planets too numerous to mention, there is, judging from the array of characters in this book, apparently not a single woman. It's all men, all the way down, dear reader. I thought you should know. So, somebody wrote an angry reply to him and was like, "What do you expect? A male in the 50s wrote it, blah, blah, blah." Like, as though, like, women didn't exist in the 50s. So, my new friend John replied and said in part, "There was, I believe, quite a large amount of literature written in the 50s that acknowledged the existence of womankind. But that's not really my point. The point is that, despite the medium-sized idea running through it, there's not much for us now."
Oh, my friend John.
Good old John. So then another user named Tony said, "Asimov's insipid foundation is rated 0.5 star. This book is basically a collection of fictional conversations between city council employees, and
It so is.
and it reads like the transcripts from regional government meetings where they discuss the minutiae of daily tasks of city government, only it's not quite as exciting. 2 chapters deviate from the horrendously boring formula of two..." This is one of my favorite words. 2 chapters deviate from the horrendously boring formula of 2 dullards chatting.
Dullards. It's a misprint.
Dullards. I don't know if he read the same book I did. They're obviously very smart.
And instead are anecdotes about sales techniques. These chapters read like the orientation booklet door-to-door salesmen are given on their first day of a job they're not sure they even want.
Aw.
Okay, I'm done.
I tried so hard to find reviews of this book from when it came out. Like,
Yeah, it's hard to find.
I looked and looked and looked because I really wanted to know what people thought of it when
Yeah.
it first came out, and I could not find one. So if anybody has one, please send it my way. via our email, hugogirlpodcast@gmail.com, because I would really like to read it.
I bet it's because in the 50s, people didn't take science fiction as seriously, so like the Times wasn't reviewing it.
But
probably.
like those, there could have been like a magazine
Yeah,
review or
that's true.
something.
I guess
You're probably right, though. That's why you can't find them now.
They might just not be online. Like, you know.
Yeah, I bet you're right. That makes sense.
Well, if you've got it, we'd love to see it.
Yeah. Instead, I have 3 ladies who gave me some fine verbiage from Goodreads. Lady Nerd gave it 2 stars and said, the men in this book are so aware of how clever they are that everyone sounds like an absolute prick. And I couldn't agree more. Rihanna gave it 2 stars. Do you have Rihanna?
No, I'm just excited to hear from her.
Oh, no. I like Rihanna the singer.
Yeah.
That's a different Rihanna. She gave it 2
that's
stars.
Rihanna.
And she made the point that she couldn't believe they haven't cured cancer or diabetes in the future by space.
Oh, yeah.
I know, right? And then Amber, my girl Amber, she gave it 2 stars and took it upon herself to list most of the women who show up, and gave us such memorable characters as dead-voiced girl but efficient young lady.
Oh, I have that.
And nameless girl / any young female will do.
Literally.
Who does also appear with her mother very briefly. And then maybe my favorite is the wife of the dude from
the Commodore,
Corellia or whatever.
The Commodore.
The Commodore and the Commodora, who is like cold-eyed and snake-tongued and like, she couldn't get a break.
That whole scene was like watching Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. It was just like, ooh, these people hate each other.
Yeah, they sure do.
But then you can dazzle her with the right accessory.
I'm going to read a couple of her paragraphs because they were just so good. The unsettling and mysterious disappearance of over half the galaxy's human population kept me distracted through the entire book.
They got raptured.
Maybe we're supposed to assume that this far in the future, science has done away with sexual reproduction altogether, and femme, that wretched condition, has been entirely engineered out of the human species, leaving femmes the equivalent of rare birth defect? It's hypothetically possible you could do such a thing, but the gender to disappear as a result would almost certainly be the male. But no. There is a reference on page 31 to the wives and children of the 30,000 men who are part of Hari Seldon's project. It appears more likely the culture of the future is one that keeps women strictly sequestered from any participation in public life. Gee, I didn't realize it was going to be a dystopia. And then she says, practically all of Foundation consists of men sitting in rooms talking about what's happening somewhere off stage. It's almost like reading a Socratic dialogue, and the worlds of the former Galactic Empire are sterile, shadowy places that have no clear physical presence or emotional impact. The best place description anywhere in the book was at the very beginning when Gaal Dornick arrived on the city planet Trantor, and even it was somewhat cursory and ended up quickly becoming irrelevant. To sum up, when I wasn't being driven to distraction by the mystery of the missing women, this book put me to sleep several times.
I'm going to imagine that Amber is Amber from the Sci-Fi Side.
Oh, yeah. That'd be good.
I'd love to hear her thoughts.
It might be.
Yeah, I mean, it really
very
might
easily
be.
could be.
That's a fun podcast, and also they're funny on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say something about that, too. Oh, yeah. One thing that she missed is that women are very important because they're the primary engines of / victims of capitalism in the merchant princes section.
They are.
I mean, it is all about what we can sell to women and planned obsolescence, because once women are addicted to this flashing rainbow flame jewelry and then it burns out in 6 months, they'll pay anything to get another one.
Anything at all.
So really, women make the world go round.
What's funny is that I was so excited to finish this book and jump back into The Count of Monte Cristo, which I'm 600 pages in.
Oh, good job.
I'm almost halfway done.
Yay.
But so that book was written, middle of the 19th century. Women aren't treated much better, but I was still happy just to see female characters, even if Alexander Dumas says things like she was 36 but still beautiful. I was like, at least he's talking about them, At least there's a couple of characters that are just wives, of course, or plot points. But I was just like, women at least exist here.
I mean, I guess if you don't have a lot of female characters, you at least don't have to suffer through the boob talk.
Yeah, that's true. It was a very asexual book in that sense.
So I have burning a hole in my Kobo, and part of the reason I was so resentful about having to read this week is I just got Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie from the library, so I only have 2 weeks to read it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
read this crap.
I was just very mad about it. I wanted to be reading that, and that was written in the 30s, and boy, there's plenty of racism in that book.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
I just saw the new series that is coming out that's called Agatha Christie But Not Racist, where they have re-edited
really?
her books.
That's nice.
Yeah, because the stories are fun and witty and really great, and then it's that word. And it's it serves no purpose other than just really be upsetting. So I'm super excited that that's a thing. But yeah, I was just thinking all this time that I could just be reading a little Agatha Christie mystery, and instead I have to read this. And Kevin said to me at one point, Oh, I had said, can I just get the Cliff's Notes? And Kevin looked at me with judging eyes and he was like, oh, no. And then like the next day he was like, should we just get you the Cliff's Notes? You look so unhappy.
Aw.
The Cliff Notes would probably be as long as the book.
I know.
Is the problem.
I know. That was the thing. I was so annoyed
It would
with
have
myself.
more information.
I was like, this book is so short. And I'm having such a tough
And the book
time.
is like the Cliff Notes. Like I read the Wikipedia summary and it was like reading the book.
Yeah, that's what
Like there's just not. I mean, I didn't hate it. It was very clinical in a way.
I liked it more after I read that it was a collection of short stories. Like it would feel way better to read these alone and a couple months apart.
For sure.
Yeah.
And
Like-
that's a common complaint that I've made when we read books where like a bunch of short stories are squished together and sold as a novel. And it actually prompted me to go and look up the dictionary definition of a novel. And this technically meets the Merriam-Webster
Just length,
dictionary.
right? Or-
It says like a long fictional story with a overarching idea, basically.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it does have an overarching idea, which is men talking in rooms.
Yeah.
So it is very technically a novel, but to me, a novel is something that I just want to sit down and sink into for like 100 pages or an hour or longer.
And like live in it. Like
yeah.
you don't want to live in this conference chair.
Well, and I thought this book doesn't even really have much setting, as Amber mentioned. And I was thinking back to like middle school when the teacher is like, a novel has setting and characters. And I was like, nope, it's got theme. This book is basically only theme.
Well, it's like a play about
Yes.
ideas. Yeah.
Yes.
The Trantor was one of the only places we actually learn anything about. Trantor is the HQ of the Galactic Empire. It's in the very first
You mean
part.
Coruscant?
Yes, the planet city, and like apparently, the psychohistorians, the first story in Foundation was written later as a story for the book. So like he was trying to world build in
That's
that one.
so interesting
and he was
because that's my
trying to
favorite
do-
one.
Yeah.
When
that is
I
the best
read that,
one.
I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. Like
Yeah.
there was
when I told you guys that it went quickly. That's when I was still in.
There was a
Yeah.
cool city planet, just
Yeah.
like Star
Yeah.
Wars, where the planet and the city are the same thing. And he even comes out and says, like, oh, Trantor, the whole planet consisted of a single city of like 75 billion people or
And
something.
details too. Like it was
Yeah.
only 400 feet tall.
Yeah.
Like,
And then like
it was cool.
I was invested in the guy. Like he's got a new job.
Yeah,
he's like
yeah.
country come to town. He's nervous. And we've all been, he's a fancy guy to me. Like he's a mathematician. I mean, that's a fancy person. And yet he feels like a rube. He's like, I don't know how to act on this spaceship. And I like asked a dumb question. I don't know about radiation. And like we've all felt like fish out of water, or we're just like not up to the standard. And I was really rooting for him, and I was like, oh, this is cool. He's going to go do this thing. And then it's like a bait and switch. And I was like, what's going to happen to him? And everyone's in jail. And then they were like, okay, here's some new men in rooms.
I know.
And I was,
You have this courtroom drama. Then they're
Yeah.
all going to Terminus. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to see what they do there. And then no.
so I will say that first story leaves me, now that you've told me that it was written after, that leaves me open to the idea of reading more Asimov, because I thought that was a good story.
And apparently a lot of his apparently later short stories especially are very good. Like the very latest Foundation books apparently aren't that great because they have a feel of like legacy building, sort of like they don't really fit.
Men talking in rooms.
Yeah.
Well, it's just more that the books don't fit, and he's trying to tie them into his other books, and like he's trying to create this thing
Well,
that
and,
doesn't
like,
really exist. But
iRobot is good. The gods themselves I've read are good. He created the 3 laws of robotics. Like he's a smart.
I think
cool
he
guy.
learned to do it a little better later.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I don't mean to suggest that, like, I think this is, like, a shitty book or anything. I mean, I just didn't like it, but I think there's, like, plenty interesting and important about it.
Yeah, it was just
I
not
just
fun
didn't
to
like
read.
it. But I did think that
I
the
agree,
first,
yeah.
like, I'm very interested to know that the first book was was written after the fact. Or the first story was written after the fact, because I thought, like, this book started so strong and then just fizzled for me.
And it's really annoying because like he clearly can write place well. Like if given, like, because Trantor is really the character of that first. Like
Yeah.
Hari Sheldon is really just Gandalf. I mean, he's not really a character. He's more like a embodiment of an idea. And
Yeah.
it continues to, and all the characters kind of continue to be like that. So if he had just done it, I wish he had done it. Like you never really know what Terminus looks like. You know that the locals aren't happy a lot of
It
the
looks
time.
like my gym.
Yeah.
My gym is called Terminus Strength and Conditioning.
Atlanta also used to be called Terminus.
Yeah.
So I was excited about that. I was like, oh, cool, we're a whole planet.
I had Yay Atlanta written somewhere in here, and I took it
And then
back
I
out.
was like, oh, no, it's not fun.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I was upset that he didn't do that more later, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like what we said earlier. Like, if this was the first, so I like to imagine. So this book or the first part of it, the first short story or whatever that was published was written like in the middle of World War II. So like there are people like going through like, old times, but also like a new huge world war. And like they're reading this about like the idea of like other planets having people. And that's huge.
And I think that's interesting that you point out was written during the middle of a war because, the Encyclopedists, which was the first story written chronologically, like in real time, I guess. It was originally called Foundation. It became the second chapter. It was called, anyway. He takes such issue with the academics in that. And I wonder if it's sort of that wartime idea of a man of action versus a man of ideas and like which one.
Well, it's funny because I was reading his Wikipedia and during World War II, he was like a civilian contractor. So like he wasn't a fighter.
Oh, interesting. And that's when we meet my boyfriend, Salvador Hardin.
Well, and he would go on to get a PhD too. So like,
yeah, he's not a man of action exactly. Yeah. But he's like Salvador Hardin. Was that he keeps saying violence is the last refuge of the incompetent.
Yeah. I've heard that my whole life, and I don't know who I heard it from, but like that's definitely, I think, seeped into our culture because I was super familiar with that phrase, and I was like, oh, that. And that was another time that I was faked out. I was like, I'm gonna like this.
Yeah. I kind of want to create a cross-stitch sampler with that on it.
Do it.
That's a lot of words.
I liked Salvador Hardin. I liked his shrewdness. I liked that he like went places and talked to other people, and I liked all of his pithy sayings. I thought they were all fun.
He loves an what are they called?
Epigram. And I liked the callbacks to them too, where they would like use one of his phrases, but maybe even twist it to mean something else later. I thought that was a clever device.
You know what I think I don't like about that though, and throughout all like the ending part of every chapter was they kind of act like trickster gods. They're like. I'm going to sell you this and it's going to stop working.
They're not trickster gods. They're capitalists.
Same difference.
Well, a lot of what I read about this book and the series as a whole was that Asimov sort of created the sort of puzzle within a big puzzle idea. And when you think of it that way, it is kind of interesting. It's like he creates these little puzzles and these stories. And at the end, the guy who figured out the puzzle and did the thing, self-congratulatory, tells everybody what he did. And then there's this larger puzzle of how they're going to get from A to B and find that other part of the foundation and bring it all together and make a new. I don't know. The idea is good. I just don't. I don't know that he did it successfully, but it was an interesting way to write something. I think
it's one of our usual complaints.
I know.
Great idea.
And I think there's nothing wrong with it. Like you said earlier, Amy, if you got it in a quarterly magazine,
right,
and you read 20 pages of like, what are these people up to now? It would be interesting, but like. So, I oftentimes will read the book like right after we pick it. And then by the time we get to recording, it's been 3 weeks. So I was like, I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to wait. It's not that long. I'm going to read it the week of. So it's fresh in my mind. And then I was trying to just like sit down and marathon read it. That is not pleasurable.
No.
Oh, no.
It's not.
That would not be pleasurable.
That's why I made that green eggs and ham cartoon about how I didn't like it.
I can understand. That makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah, because if I had started it a month ago and like read one story a week, I probably wouldn't have been as bothered. But I was just like, oh man, this is like watching paint dry, and I have to do it for like 2 hours.
Well, but I had to read it in big chunks because like I would forget what was happening. There's so many characters and none of them are memorable. Like,
oh, for sure.
I was like, wait, which one?
So I was trying to at least finish one story per sitting because I found that if it was like late at night and I was trying to push through and then I would read like the first 2 chapters of a story and then go to sleep, I'd wake up in the morning and be like, who are you?
Yeah, same.
I had to go back and I had to do this. I had to go back and read a couple things because he was throwing these names out and I completely forgot who they were.
Oh yeah, they're not memorable.
Especially in the Traitors. That Traitors one sort of sits off by itself as a like this one with Limar Ponyetz goes and saved this guy from the ancestor worshippers.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that one?
No.
He brings them the machine that creates gold. And then,
that was a particularly not interesting one.
Yeah, that one was my least favorite by far. What was your Asimov as a bad guy stuff?
Oh my god!
How he died is so sad
to decide if I should save it for a misogynist moment or what. Yeah. But so
he accidentally caught HIV in a blood transfusion. That's how he died. But then they never mentioned AIDS because they didn't want it to taint his family.
Yeah.
So, yeah. He
also not okay.
Yeah.
Listen, let's all be better people, society. Okay, so on the subject of not being very good people, the first thing that I ever really knew about Asimov was when we were little baby podcasters and we had just made a Twitter. And I, since I primarily am doing our social media, I follow people on our Twitter that I want to follow. And one of them is Peter Sagal from Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Yes!
And so the first thing that I ever saw, I want to say this was like 2018, was a tweet from Peter Sagal replying to somebody about something. And he said, I watched Asimov do it once. Girl came up to him in hall at 1980 Worldcon to say hello as a fan. I remember him grabbing her by the shoulders and sticking his tongue in her mouth. So gross.
No.
And
Asimov.
so then I looked into that, and he was known for it. In fact, to the point where one of the Worldcon directors asked him to do a presentation, something like the power of pinching posteriors or some shit like that.
Oh, no.
And there's a long history of people being sexually abused and harassed at Worldcon.
Oh, God.
And it's like, listen, let's do better, because it is in the recent past too. There's been a long history of it.
He just died in 97.
Well, yeah, so people just looked the other way with Asimov, and there was one story in an article. There's a Gizmodo article by Jim Hines about sexual harassment in the sci-fi community, and it's a very interesting article, and he tells his own story of being, I think, grabbed at a Worldcon, and there are a lot of stories from men who have been abused at conventions, and one of them that he mentioned was a story from, I think, a man whose girlfriend was harassed or assaulted by Asimov, and when that guy complained to Worldcon leadership, that person was ejected from Worldcon and Asimov was not.
Okay, well, that's not the right response.
Nope, that's not the right
Wow.
response. So there's, a lot of people have written about it, and as recently as just a few years ago. So, that's shitty, and be better to each other, and stick up for people and protect people. And sounds like Asimov was kind of a shitbird. And so I was actually surprised.
Maybe I'm glad he didn't write about women.
Well, I'm kind of surprised there weren't any women in the book. And then Olav.
Well, if you don't see them as people, then why would you put them in your book?
Right. Well, so Olav, who does most of the tweeting from the Hugo Book Club blog Twitter, mentioned when I was like, I don't like this book. And also, there are no women in it. And he said that, I think in the prequels that came way later, he said there are women and a lot about Selden's non-consensual fantasies in those.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it starts bleeding through into his writing. Yeah, it's too bad. Yeah. It's too bad. And I felt like it was important to acknowledge that, because he was a lauded person who was, protected by a community because of his reputation and his success. He got away with a lot that no one should get away with.
Let's be better, guys.
Yeah, let's be better. Let's treat all people like people.
It makes me think, so,
If you wouldn't do it to The Rock, don't do it to a woman.
Or don't do it to men, and don't do it to non-binary people. Just leave people alone.
Yeah.
We read all of the N.K. Jemisin books that all won Best Hugo Novel Award, in the teens of this century. And the Sad Puppies were very upset about that, women getting all the awards. But, she wrote a book that had men and women.
It sure did. Mm-hmm. It sure did.
Like almost half and half, I would say.
Yeah.
Turns out you can people your worlds with actual people.
Well, and that makes me think of some of the angry reviews that I read of Ancillary Justice, where they were like, a world with no men? Ridiculous. But the thing is, Ann Leckie didn't write a series with no men. You just don't have visibility. But also, there really isn't visibility for women either. She just chose to use what we consider feminine pronouns, but we don't know what anyone's gender is or would be from our perspective. So, it's so interesting to me that there can be this rage over a lack of visibility. And yet...
Well, those same people would never complain about having a book with no women in it.
No.
Which is...
Well, and then,
drives
they
me batty.
push back about those complaints by saying he was a man in the 1950s.
No women.
Well, I'm a woman in the 2020s. You know what? I don't like men. I'm not going to put them in my book.
But, even that,
I'm a creature of my time.
Even if somebody were to write a book that was only women, which I'm not sure happens very often, even talking about it makes it sound like a joke, because the way that our society is structured, it's impossible. There's men everywhere. But for a very huge chunk of human history, women were just side
Invincible.
pieces. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But we were still there.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But, it seems weird that they couldn't even, mention them.
Well, and the other thing is, as inventive as Asimov was in this and all these big ideas that he came up with, and this happens so often, didn't envision a future where women had a meaningful role other than wives and consumers to generate wealth for men.
12,000 years from now, they still have washing machines that they have to use. Only them have to use. And if they don't work, by gum, they're going to rise up.
There's going to be a Cold War.
This makes me even happier that I have not watched the television show that is now on.
I've heard it's got mixed reviews.
It's got Captain Crozier in it.
Well, I'm mostly
and Lee
happy
Pace.
that Salvor Hardin is a woman of color in the show.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I would like to. I hope they give her some cigars.
Well, that's what they're doing with a lot of sci-fi these days. Is like peopling it with all
Actual
of humanity,
people.
yeah, and not just white British men from like the Imperial Navy.
And that's the other thing. Like none of the cultures, like apart from some questionable descriptions, you don't really get a dynamic cultural difference between any of these planets.
Yeah.
Like, they're all. I think they're pretty much all peopled by white men in this person's mind. And
it had me thinking a lot about nuclear power too, because like that was like their big deciding factor between like important societies and not important ones. And I was like, wow, that was really in the middle of the atomic age, wasn't it?
I mean, and at the time they really did think that was going to be the big differentiator. Like who's going to have this and who doesn't? Because I mean, it was a arms race, really.
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes sense. I don't know, but he actually wrote. Foundation was written. When did they drop those bombs?
45. So this was written technically before, but like things were stirring, I'm sure.
Yeah, they already knew. They were already coming up on the atomic age, and
they were having those atoll tests, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Huh.
Okay, let's talk about Asimov's language. So I mentioned the computo clock. Like I loved these like weird science fiction terms like you see in TV and what else. I liked there's a part of Terminus called Cyclopedia Square. Not encyclopedia, cyclopedia.
Like, is that like cyclorama?
Yeah.
Encyclopedia is just too long.
Yeah, no, just call it cyclopedia. There's a lot of what I'm assuming he meant to be tobacco from the planet Vega, but it looks like vegan tobacco.
Oh, I know. It's so funny.
Can we also LOL just for a second about that he named one of his characters Weenus?
Oh, I laughed the entire time.
Thank you so much.
Weenus.
I forgot about it.
I was like, maybe it's Winus. That makes it better, right?
It was one of the more entertaining aspects of this book.
On page 111 was I have posed this as a question and jest many times. Do you know the phrase nook and cranny?
I do.
No one's ever just said cranny, right? Isaac Asimov does. On page 111, he goes, poked his stubby nose into the dusty crannies.
What?
But wait, how are you not going to use nook?
Because there was only
crannies. There was only crannies.
What is a cranny if not the same thing as a nook?
I don't know. I was like, well, what is a nook? Like a breakfast nook? What's a cranny? No one's ever just used cranny. One of the chapters starts with this phrase that I'm sure he did not mean to do a sexual double entendre, but I couldn't help thinking of it. Another week was rubbed away before the meeting.
Rubbed away.
Yeah.
What do you mean rubbed away? No one said that either.
He also really likes to say people did things sardonically. Did you notice that?
Sardonically.
Everybody's looking at people sardonically.
Some people have those like
sighing sardonically.
There's so much smoking in this book. It was like watching a movie from the 1940s.
Yes.
But so Lori noticed my section called So Butch, and there's just one sentence in this book that was like the apotheosis of masculinity. It's like the time that I saw a construction worker carrying a Drakkar Noir lunchbox. It was in Midtown. I was driving to work, and I was like, that's the most manly thing I've ever seen. So the sentence is, it was after four men in one of the chapters, I forget which, they all run together, did something great. Kind of like in Titanic when he calls them the masters of the universe and they retreat for brandy and cigars.
Right.
One by one, with grave solemnity, the four of the deputation accepted cigars and lit up in ritualistic fashion. It's Yeah, it's almost phallic and like, let's light our cigars, guys.
Absolutely is.
Do you have the part in the last section, the naked sunbathing
when they're in the bath,
and he puts the one guy puts the cigar in the other guy's mouth and lights it for him. And I was like, well, they're at the least they're flirting, right?
Yeah. It was so homoerotic, I couldn't even take it.
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
No, and sometimes you're sunbathing with your boyfriend, and the other dude shows up, and you tell your boyfriend to get scarce, and then you light that other dude's cigar, and you have a good time.
Yeah, his cigar's great.
Also, sometimes that happens.
One other talking point, and I did agree with this: religion as civilizing influence. Discuss. I think it does have that point.
So they did this thing where they first talked about, the controlling. Like learned class, right? And then they want to branch out. So they attach religion to their science and basically say, you can have this science, but we're going to only control it from here and it's all religious. And so they have this religion and then they throw off the religion part and they go with pure capitalism.
Yeah.
And actually that was interesting to me because, he basically predicted cultural, like whatever the world, cultural,
globalization?
I guess globalization. I guess that's what I'm thinking of. Whereas, we've now everybody wants a McDonald's kind of thing.
I think we were getting there too with like World War II. America was getting pretty big. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like it happened after World War II, but maybe I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that he sort of thought about this concept of you can sell a bunch of stuff to a people, and then if they can no longer get that stuff, it might, you can control by trade. You can control by
a dependency on a product.
Yeah, you can control by trade, and you can really have a lot of power through trade. And I don't know how much.
I don't think he invented that.
I don't know if he invented it, but I feel
like the British Empire did a pretty good job with that, with India and Africa.
But they weren't selling goods to control places. They were literally conquering them with guns.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting time for him to be talking about that because I wasn't sure how much commodity globalization there was. But I guess, worldwide trade's always been, it's been a thing for a long time.
And within the next 10 years, America would be a superpower, so.
Right, but they weren't yet, so it was like.
Yeah, but it didn't come out completely out of nowhere, I bet.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I thought that his idea that there are these different ways to kind of proliferate an idea and control people through ideas, like there's these different ways to do it. I thought it was interesting. Yeah. I don't know that he wrote about it in an interesting way.
He did mention it, though.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If Selden knew the future on such an enormous scale, is there something in here about free will?
So I think that's why these books are popular, because it pits inevitability against free will, and there's a scientific idea that you can predict how certain electrons, a bunch of electrons are going to behave in any given situation, right? But you can't predict how a given electron is going to behave in a given situation, which is kind of that just applied to people in this book, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that there's still free will, but the people who we watch in these stories know about Selden crises, and so they're constantly trying to fit their.
They're kind of fulfilling this prophecy.
Yeah, and they know they are. So it's so they could not do it, right? But they do because they see the virtue in it.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's an interesting question.
Psychohistory reminds me of the fact that all my friends that have gotten PhDs in political science just do statistics. It's all just math now. It's just math.
Which is what this is. It's like predicting people using math.
Yeah, and it's statistics and economics and actuarial tables and things like that.
I don't know that I think what they're doing in this is possible.
I just want to read. I want to read an Amazon review that's where can I get this encyclopedia?
Well, there's just too much. I feel like there's too much variables. There's too many variables to predict 30,000 years. An asteroid could freaking hit the Earth.
Nobody could have. I guess you could have predicted a pandemic, but the effect to which Americans weren't wearing masks, that could have been. Maybe
that is predictable. because people have done it in the past.
But on a large scale at this point in history, if an asteroid hits the Earth, that's really not relevant because we inhabit thousands of planets. So something that to us feels like an enormous scale event on this scope isn't anymore.
I think the mask thing is actually an interesting answer to your question about free will, because it's you can look at how people have behaved in pandemics in the past and said, okay, well, this percentage of people will wear masks, the pandemic will go away in this amount of time, and then these things will happen afterwards because they always happen, right? But any given person can choose or not choose to wear a mask, right? Mm-hmm. It's just they're saying enough people will choose to do it that these things will happen. I
guess predicting every single thing that could possibly happen would take a lot of math.
It's a lot of math.
Yeah. I don't know if one man could do it in a lifetime.
I guess if you have billions and billions and billions of worlds and billions of people, you have a lot of data points. You can maybe.
Yeah. But he did it in his lifetime, whereas even if you wrote out the numbers 1 to a billion, it would take you a million years or something. There's just only so much calculation you could do in a lifetime.
It's three-body problem. He's got all the people with the flags.
Yeah.
Doing their binary code calculations.
The people computer. I forgot about them.
The people computer.
I loved them.
I can't understand it. I think about it a lot. And I'm man, what is that?
You've got to watch a YouTube video about how punch card computers used to work because it's very similar.
Fax machines are still miraculous to me, so I don't know.
I don't know how my car works.
No, I didn't know how anything works. Kevin listens to records, and I'm you put this little plate in this little plate holder.
How do records work?
And
it has been explained 1 million times. It doesn't make any sense.
Orchestra comes out.
Kevin, how do records work?
It's pits and grooves, but what does that mean?
The needle goes bzz, bzz, bzz,
but how does the needle make the same noise as a drum?
Pits and grooves. It's like saying the internet is a series of tubes.
Have you guys seen the musical Roads? Are y'all familiar with this?
Never even heard of it.
So in some roads in some parts of the world, including our own part of the world, They make these roads.
I thought you meant like the Broadway musical.
Yeah.
Roads.
Musical roads.
Yeah. I know what you're
So
talking
yeah,
about.
they make the bumps so that when you drive
Yeah.
over the bumps at a certain miles
Yeah.
per hour, you make a song.
But not
I
one
think
of
that's
them-
how records work.
But not one of them has ever made a drum sound. It's always just like brrr.
No, it
Fair.
does make like a humming sound though.
It is
Yeah.
very cool.
Never made a synthesizer sound.
Anyway,
I
musical roads are very interesting to me.
Yeah, no, I thought you were talking about the musical Rose.
Yeah, like Roads
And I was
starring Idina Menzel.
and I was like, I've never even heard of this word before.
roads. Yeah,
Let it roll.
525,000 roads.
I think that's all of my talking points.
It's all my talking points.
And there is no feminist favorite.
I have a
I
couple,
do have one.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more thing that I wrote down.
Okay.
And it is planned obsolescence. Thanks, I hate it. And then I pulled a quote out of a review from Tor.com that I read before I started reading the book. That this is a good review, and it made me very interested to read the book. And then, but to be fair to this book, I want to share an excerpt from it. And the reviewer said, even characters with tremendous power and influence in one story may be a speck on a timeline, a historical footnote, unrecognizably transformed by the vagaries of the passage of time, or forgotten altogether in the future. Oddly enough, I took comfort in that. Nothing is so horrible that it lasts forever. I wish I could go back in time and tell myself that. I know.
I love that.
I found that very moving.
I have a similar review from a guy on Google Reviews underneath the high schoolers review. His name is Mad Wisdom. And a month ago, he gave it 5 stars and said, wow, I can't wait to dive in Foundation and witness the possibilities I won't be around to experience. Why he's so salty?
You know, this reminds me of when European cultures would start building cathedrals that wouldn't be finished for hundreds of years. And, they just had to take it on faith that the thing they were building was going to be finished and be an edifice to God. And it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of some of the conversations that were had between Selden in part 1 and whoever was the emperor or the in charge of Trenzalore or whatever that's where the doctor is buried.
Yeah.
Trantor.
Trantor. Yeah.
Okay, he's having the conversation, and the emperor is like, 300 years, like, or 30,000, you're like, what do I care about that? And I mean, that really is how we think about things. And it's like part of the problem with how we think about things.
Yeah.
But the scope of Selden's plans are like so big that people right now have a hard time caring about them. And 30,000 years, that's a very long time. But 300 years, really, that isn't that long. Like, your identifiable, like, countable descendants would be around in 300 years. Like, please care about that. And so it does highlight how we take such a narrow view of time.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I donate my quarterly $5 to Wikipedia, I feel like an encyclopedist.
I always get really worried for them. They're always so
Me too.
They're
That's
always
why
so
I give
emphatic
money.
about
I give
it.
money too.
Well, but I also spend,
I give money too, but I get worried for them.
like, I'm on that webpage every single day of my life.
One time I was looking at Wikipedia and it was like, can you spare just $3.23 per month? And I said, okay. And now I just do like an auto debit of like $3.23 a month.
I love Wikipedia.
I do too.
It's super useful.
Yeah.
So yeah, feminist
Feminist
favorite. I
faves,
wrote
guys.
lol.
Lol.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the 5-star review, I wanted to mention that when I finished reading it, my Kobo always says, rate this book. And I was very angry and I clicked 1 star, but I didn't write anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when I clicked the 1 star, the Kobo just filled in, I hated it with an exclamation point.
I hated it.
I was like, well, I really didn't like it, but I don't know if I would like exclamation point say I hated it. But the Kobo put it there. So, it's in the Kobo's hands.
In our project management program at work, there's a little, so like for like every job that's created for tasks or whatever, for like things I gotta write, there's always like, it's added new auto responses that are like, thanks. And then also, can I suggest a new deadline? And I click it every single time.
Can I suggest a new
I
deadline?
can't. I'm assigned deadlines, but like, boop. It's funny.
I had technically two feminist faves. One of them is the fact that they cast Salvor
For the
Hardin
movie.
as a woman. That's my feminist fave for this
Okay.
book. I'm just glad that it ended up that way. And the other one was that harpy of a wife. I kind of loved her.
Oh,
She was
yeah.
just like, you're an idiot. You need my father. You're not doing anything
Very
right.
outspoken.
She's very outspoken. She wasn't taking her fate sitting down. She didn't love this man and she made no bones about it.
I do think he also probably slept with one eye open.
I don't blame him. She was scary.
I was proud of the dead-voiced lady, but she was also efficient, so she was good at her
dead
job.
voice,
Highly competent.
Dead voice, but
Efficient
highly
young lady.
incompetent. Yep. Competent. Yep. So misogynist moments, anyone? Or
The whole selling of that rainbow light belt.
Yeah.
And then, like, I was so outraged by, like, getting women, like, so-called addicted to it, knowing that it's going to break in 6 months, so they'll have to buy another one. And it made me just think on a large scale about fashion and
Fast
trends
fashion.
and how it's all just designed to keep us
yeah.
shopping.
Oh, yeah.
And I really particularly think about this in the context of eyebrows. And Amy and I have had this conversation before about how, like, we both wish that our eyebrows were different. And even, like, I try to draw mine in and I'm like, they're still not the right eyebrows. But then I get mad at myself for caring so much. But here's the thing, like, my eyebrows aren't the right eyebrows for 2021 because in like 2002,
we overplucked.
I was told I
Yep.
needed to have one thin line of eyebrow, and I was successful in accomplishing a permanent one thin line of
Aw.
eyebrow. And the thing is, when people started doing microblading and getting those like not fully permanent, but like fairly long-term eyebrow tattoos, I was like, just you wait. Then they're going to be like, oh, the little line eyebrow is back in. And then they'll sell you a procedure to remove the remnants of your microblading. And it makes me mad. And this reminded me of that.
Yeah, you're not. I was thinking that when I was reading that whole scene, I was like, damn, this is the beauty industry too. I mean,
It's
the
planned
fashion industry, it's
obsolescence
the
and the
beauty,
beauty industry and the tech
and
industry.
it's like you need 8 different soaps for your kitchen. You
So much
need,
soap in our
so much
lives.
soap
Well,
in our
and
lives.
why is my iPhone camera just designed to get shittier over
Yeah.
time?
Yeah,
the
why
day
does my
you
phone
get
get
that
slower?
phone, it takes pictures a mile away. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
And then it's like 6 months later, it's like, oh, is that me? Where's my chin?
Thanks for nothing, Hober
Yeah,
Mallow.
Well, it's as Asimov says himself, any young female will do.
As long as she's got money to spend. Anyway, I hate it.
I'm not young, but I do have money to spend, and I am a female.
I mean, but I will say, like, I hated reading that, but it was a very accurate and thought-provoking depiction. So I'm going to give him credit for writing that well.
Yeah. Did y'all ever practice saying the planet Trantor? Because I wanted to say it like a southerner and say Trantor.
Trainer.
No,
But I was like, no, it's Trantor.
Every time I thought
Trantor?
about it, I thought it was Trenzalore. And then I'd have to remind myself that that's the doctor's funeral planet.
Trenton.
It also sounds like a sleeping pill.
It does. It sounds like Trazodone,
Trazodone.
which I also have a bottle of.
Trazzies. There is no boobs, I don't think, in a nary a
book.
boob in this whole book.
All Kindle, smooth down there. Except for the cigars.
I mean, I wonder what kind of male breasts they might have had in the sunbathe room. It's possible. There's a lot of cigars, so I'm assuming they don't eat well, but that's just an assumption.
Vegan tobacco is healthy.
Fantastic food. They did have some like limbus bread like products. So he what's his toes?
Oh, I missed that.
I missed that too, yeah.
Hober Mallow goes to that planet where the Empire lives, and he goes and sees their nuclear generators. And
Oh, yeah.
so on his way in, he talks to that nice old man. Who lost his son.
yeah.
So he talks to the nice old man, and then he goes
gives him
on,
some
and then
protein
he
bars.
sneaks
Yeah.
by and leaves him some protein
was
bars.
nice.
So there were some.
There is one moment of kindness in this
There's
whole
one, and there was
book.
one fantastic food.
Yeah. And it wasn't even that fantastic.
I wrote down the stove will roast the toughest meats to the desired tenderness in 2 minutes. And I put in parentheses, did Asimov invent the Instant Pot in the air fryer?
He invented the Instant Pot in the air fryer and Wikipedia.
Yep.
Soap stuff. The entire book? I don't know.
Let me see.
So
I have it.
Every time they like would sit down and tell someone about how they solved that problem, like I feel like it was a little soapy.
So the top tier soap stuff, in my opinion,
Oh, you're the best at this. So
Yeah,
go.
that's
is the glowing tattoo that flashed on a slow-mo video that outed the false priest as like a KGB agent or whatever.
That's right.
And when I was reading it and they said like in the moment there was a flash of light, and I was like, well, that's definitely Chekhov's flash of light. Like that's coming back later.
Yep.
And then they're at like the trial, and the grand reveal in this trial, he's like, see the video? See the flash of light? That's his glowing KGB. It's not really KGB.
Enhance.
I can't remember. Yeah, exactly. He's like, pause, enhance. And then they're like, oh, he does have a glowing KGB tattoo. Acquitted. And then everyone else has to like, all the false accusers have to trudge away in shame.
And they carry him out on their shoulders.
Yeah, and then he becomes the mayor, and like that's a bigger deal than it sounds like, because when you're the mayor of Terminus, you're the mayor of a whole planet.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That's a good one.
That was real soapy.
That's a good one.
The carrying him on the shoulders is the best part.
Hip hip hurray! Oh, they were singing for "He's a Jolly Good Fellow."
There's a very good tense moment when the KGB priest is in the ship and we think Hober Mallow might have to shoot all of his own men because they're not going to send him back out to the lynch mob.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good moment for me. I thought it was a pretty good action moment. Soapy.
I mean, just the one part where he's like, yeah, I sold that. It'll break in 2 days.
He was so happy. I love how he was just like bribing people with things, and then he's like,
They were just break when he left.
TikTok.
It works, I promise. And then it's like, no good.
And he's like, what are you going to do? I'm going to be on a different planet by the time it breaks.
Then you don't have nuclear weapons. You can't go anywhere.
You can't take that back to Target with a receipt. They don't care.
Nope. Amazing. All right. Well, that was Foundation.
Oh, Star Wars or Lord of the Rings?
Star Wars or Lord of the Rings?
Star Wars.
I mean, it had a Toyota Corellia.
It did have a Toyota Corelli. Yeah, it's got to be Star Wars.
It's got the huge city planet.
It was specifically not Lord of the Rings because it lost to Lord of the Rings.
Oh, it's also Star Wars because it's like the prequels because there's trade disputes.
Oh my God, I had the exact same thought. I was like, there's a Galactic Federation. There's a very boring trade dispute.
Such a big trade
This
dispute.
has prequels at some point. It's completely
100%
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
100% Star Wars.
And there's no or is Star Wars Foundation only
Oh,
fun?
no.
It's unanimous.
Star Wars is Foundation, but fun.
That's true.
All right, coming up next time, we're going to be doing the Forever War.
Yeah, we had tossed around the idea of reading all three of these. And because my two friends here like and care about my well-being, we decided not to do that.
We ain't doing it. So we're reading the Forever War. We have been Forever War. Wow, that's hard to say. We have been asked to do this by no fewer than 3 listeners, up to and including Dana, Kyle, and Emmanuel. So,
And someone else.
We're going to dig into some military sci-fi as
right.
an analog for the Vietnam War. Let's do it.
We're here to serve.
I'm ready.
All right. Anything
I just
else?
saluted
I
you, the
captain.
listeners.
Oh, yes, she
Nobody
definitely did.
Nobody
It was
could
very
see
snappy.
Nobody could see it. Yeah, rate, review, subscribe, please. Do the
Leave me
things.
a review
Thanks
for
for
November.
November.
Or you could leave it before the end of October. That's okay. Oh, well, this won't be out until November. Okay, leave me a review for November.
Make Laurie's whole month.
Bye.
Goodbye.
I'm looking at Haley's handwritten notes upside down, and I'm excited to when we get to whatever she has under so butch.